Abstract, the aim of this paper is to discuss the concept of identity and its relationship to language proficiency. In particular, the question of an influence on an individual's identity through near-native L2 proficiency will be investigated. This includes the factor of age of language acquisition and the critical period hypothesis, CPH, also referred to as sensitive period or age effects in recent years. Furthermore, the development of deep emotional bonds to an L2 and the L2 community is discussed, leading to the concept of identity and its use in applied linguistics. The paper concludes that defining the concept of identity based solely on language is not fruitful. Rather, it leads to further terminological confusion, as does equating identity with social roles. This suggests for a concept of identity that is defined independently of the languages an individual is able to understand and speak, bearing in mind that languages may influence an individual's self-concept as much as social roles and the living environment. Keywords L2, proficiency, emotional bonds to language, identity and language, bilingualism, multilingualism, language acquisition, sensitive period in language learning 1, the native and the near-native speaker, only recently the book, Lessons from Exceptional Language Learners Who Have Achieved Native-like Proficiency. Motivation, Cognition and Identity by Dernier and Mentzelopoulos was published, addressing the issue of near-native proficiency in exceptional L2 language learners. The book serves as an excellent basis for the discussion, as the authors not only provide an excellent overview of the current state of the debate on the concept of the native speaker, and then refreshingly approach the topic of nativeness and native-likeness, not with language tests for once, but in the form of 30 qualitative biographical interviews to get the view of the speakers themselves. In this book, the authors deal with a topic that has received less attention so far: the near-native L2 proficiency of exceptional L2 speakers. The authors deliberately narrow down this group of speakers with selection criteria according to which the study participants were chosen. The criteria briefly presented in the introduction are described in detail in chapters 2 and 3. Crucial for the authors was the criterion that a speaker could be perceived by others as an L1 speaker, at least for a limited time, could be taken for a native speaker of the language by real native speakers, in a casual conversation for at least 5 minutes. Thus, they look at native-like proficiency from a different angle than has been common in research on outstanding foreign language learners. Instead of defining syntactic or lexical test criteria for assessing a native-like proficiency, the authors rely on the judgment of real native speakers. Consequently, the methodology is based on the biographies of the study participants rather than on structural language proficiency tests. The author's focus is primarily on what aspects of exceptional learners can be transferred to improve the chances of success for ordinary learners. After a brief introduction to the theoretical background and some previous studies dealing with gifted L2 learners, the authors describe nativeness or native-likeness as it is often understood in applied linguistics and how they defined it for the study presented in the book. The attainment of native-like proficiency can hardly be discussed without the factor of age of language acquisition and the critical period hypothesis, CPH, also referred to as sensitive period or age effects in recent work, since it is rather a gradual decline that varies across the different components of communicative competence on L2, why it is more appropriate to talk about more general age effects. The age factor and possible resulting limitations in language acquisition are fundamentally relevant to research on adult L2 learners aged 18 or older at the time of language acquisition who reached native-like proficiency. As for the critical, sensitive phases now considered to be more than one, or a smooth decline in ability, there is still disagreement on issues such as when the critical phase begins and ends, how long it lasts, and whether learning ability continues to decline or bottoms out, which remain to be clarified. The short introduction to the subject nevertheless provides the reader with a good overview and a stimulus to delve deeper. For now, it can be stated that it is already known that the younger or does better premise is not acceptable anymore per se. A number of researchers question the existence of the CP and claim that the language ability decline can be explained by a number of other factors. For example, the quality and quantity of input, motivational dynamics, and contextual factors.